Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here on this Friday afternoon. This is, for the first time in a long time, the first day of the week that we've been in this particular briefing room. Obviously, we were over at the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency for the first 3 or 4 days of this week dealing with Hurricane Sally. We were spared in Hurricane Sally by and large, and for that we are all very grateful and very thankful, and our prayers worked. We have offered our assistance to our neighbors in Alabama and Florida, and will certainly provide any help that they ask us for. We are going to talk today. Dr. Dobbs is here. We're going to talk about COVID-19. We are making significant progress with respect to COVID-19, but the reason we are making significant progress is because of the fact that you, the people of Mississippi, have stayed committed to doing the little things. Little things like wearing a mask, staying 6 feet apart, avoiding large gatherings. It is because of your hard work that the numbers continue to fall. But we cannot let up the gas. Now is really the time to put our foot to the floor and make sure we continue to stamp down COVID-19. In the report that we got from the White House on Monday, we had a little over 3,200 cases. That's down from a peak of 9,300 cases, one of the first reports that we received. And so we're down almost 2/3 to 70% from the peak. But I'll tell you, when we get a report on Monday from them, what we're going to see is that this week was relatively flat when compared to last week. Now, we came out of Labor Day. We wanted to watch very closely what it looked like. We have not yet seen a major spike out of Labor Day, but this week we were flat, and so we didn't see a continued significant decline as we have seen for the last 5 or 6 weeks. Dr. Dobbs will come up and talk about that shortly. But as the people of our great state know, COVID is not the only battle that we are fighting here in our great state. Agriculture is one of the biggest assets and one of the largest economic engines in our state, particularly in the Mississippi Delta. Last year, we experienced a huge hit to that economic success. The 2019 backwater flood was beyond catastrophic to the Delta's economy, which means it was beyond catastrophic to Mississippi's economy. It was also catastrophic to the infrastructure, to the workforce, and to our quality of life. Families who had lived in the Delta for generations, some were forced to pack up and move. Small businesses that had grown within their communities and supported them for years were forced to shut their doors. Homes that have stood for decades were either washed away or made unlivable. We know that Mississippians are strong and resilient, but they should never have to face a challenge like this alone. I know that many may feel that their problems and their pleas for help have been ignored, but I want everyone in the Mississippi Delta to know we have not forgotten about the flood, and we have not forgotten about you. We've been working on the project for many, many years in Mississippi, and on Monday, I sent a letter to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers sharing a backwater impact report compiled by Director Michelle at MEMA, and as we work to support the Corps' efforts to address the flooding in the Yazoo backwater area. Because the only way through this is working together at all levels of government to help our beloved Delta. I'm going to let Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, who we're so honored to have with us here today, as well as Commissioner Andy Gibson, go into more specifics. But as a numbers guy, I just want you to know that the cost of the backwater flooding to lives and livelihoods is in fact astronomical. Over 680 homes were affected by the standing floodwaters. 548,000 acres were inundated by the backwater, 231,000 of which were prime cropland. Crop damages collected by the USDA are expected to exceed $800 million. The Mississippi Department of Transportation had to spend over $1 million cleanup efforts, debris removal for our roads and bridges. And the revenue losses for wildlife management areas exceeded $310,000. And yet, much of the damage that occurred from the flood is still being counted. The actual economic impact is expected to be much, much higher. It will take years to fully realize, and it will take years to eventually recover from the horrific impacts that the flood has had on the Mississippi Delta. I want to be clear. I am grateful to the Corps of Engineers for the work that they have already done and continue to do for the people of Mississippi. We stand ready to assist the Corps in their evaluation of the Yazoo Area Pump Project and to rebuild the Delta so we can emerge stronger together. At this time, I want to thank personally Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, who has been a leader since serving in Congress on this issue, and quite frankly was a leader long before in her previous role as our Commissioner of Agriculture. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Governor Reeves, and for the opportunity to join you today. And I want to thank you for how you've led us through this storm, through COVID-19, and with MEMA, Greg Michelle and his staff. We have really gone through some things, but we've had a good leader in doing that, and the leadership displayed was pretty outstanding in my opinion. As the governor said, this is so important, this report that we've gotten back. Since I have been in the U.S. Senate, we have diligently worked on the Yazoo backwater pumps, which has been going on, as he said, for a very long time, but we have to substantiate the damage there. And that's one thing that this report does, and you know, it's so important for so many things, but the information detailed in the MEMA report is important for another reason. It ensures the Corps of Engineers has the much relevant information as possible in carrying out the required environmental document for the pumps. We have to substantiate the sincere need and the facts that are there. I remain in contact with the Corps, which is continuing to work diligently to prepare what we call the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement, and that will be up for public comment. But this process includes the economic assessment of the projected benefits and the cost of the project of overcoming what we went through in the Delta. Over 500,000 acres underwater for more than 6 months. And as he said, you know, almost 700 homes either damaged or destroyed. And then the crops that were not replanted. We have to analyze all this, and we have to evaluate those losses and get them in the form that MEMA has done so well that we can present this and go forward. So we feel really good about the pumps, but a lot of it will have to do with this study that was done so well and that the governor so graciously stepped out and took the task to get this done. But this will help with the progression of making sure that we install these pumps in the backwater of the Delta. So it is just one more step, but it's a very big step in getting this done. So we had a lot of indicators of the damage and the cost amounts. Now we have a lot of evidence to back that up, and the dollar figure will be even higher than this. But it is substantial in ensuring that we get the pumps in place and hopefully prevention down the road of this catastrophic flooding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. The Senator's successor as our Agriculture Commissioner is Commissioner Andy Gibson. He has also been working very closely with MEMA as well as the Corps in assessing the agricultural damage in the lower Mississippi Delta. And so at this time, I'm going to ask Commissioner Gibson to give us a report.
Thank you, Governor. I really appreciate this opportunity and sincerely appreciate yours and Senator Hyde-Smith's work on this critical issue, this crisis for our South Delta. When I was on the Mississippi River about 3 weeks ago with Colonel Robert Hilliard, I asked him what we could do, and he said what we need is this evidence, this information, the very type of information, Governor, your office, MEMA, has put together so they can complete their environmental impact study. We are expecting that study to come out in the near term, we're optimistic about it. We all agree on the fact we've got to finish the pumps. And for those who have opposed this project for years past, the environmentalists and activists, all they have to do is look at the documented evidence of the thousands of examples of wildlife that were destroyed as a result of this. The agricultural damage speaks for itself, over $800 million direct loss in terms of crops, not counting, as the senator said, crops that were never able to be planted. I was in the South Delta 6 days ago or 7 days ago and saw thousands of acres that would have been growing cotton or corn or soybeans, and it's growing weeds and grass. And it never was able to be planted because, in addition to the 2019 flood, it flooded again this year due to the high river levels, and it just was too wet to plant. So our South Delta neighbors need our help, and we're never going to stop working on this project. As the senator works in Washington, D.C., we work here in the state of Mississippi. We will never forget the floods and the need to finish the pumps. Very encouraged by some meetings that we've had, and the senator I know has had, governor as well, with our Environmental Protection Agency. The agency that once, years ago, vetoed this project seems now to be receptive to it, and so we are optimistic that we will indeed finish the pumps, help our farmers, help our neighbors in the South Delta recover from this tragedy so that it doesn't happen again. And I appreciate, Governor, this opportunity. Senator, thank you both for your excellent work.
Thank you, Commissioner Gibson, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, for being here with us. I'm going to ask Director Michelle and Dr. Dobbs to come up, and we will give an update on COVID. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Senator. A little bit different. I'm going to start with Director Michelle, since his agency did do the study that was discussed, and let him give you an update on that particular item.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Governor. As has already been mentioned here today, progress is continuing to be made on trying to get this pump project initiated and to get complete. It is a very lengthy project once it would begin, so it's very important that this data be put together. Well, just to give a little back history on the backwater flood, just as a reminder, this actually began at the end of 2018 where we had 20 inches of above average rainfall. Leading into 2019, 10 inches in 2 days in late December 2018 was what really led to what became a federal disaster, which was FEMA's award of a federal declaration of 4429. The Mississippi River surpassed flood stage in January of 2019, and it remained at that level until mid-July of 2019, crested at 98.2 feet in May, and it remained at flood level for over 6 months. That area that was affected was already a very impoverished area with a over 47% poverty rate. So not only was the agricultural industry affected greatly, but the people that live in those communities were affected greatly as well. The governor's already mentioned the number of homes and the acreage that was destroyed and flooded. Public assistance to date is over $26 million, and that number is rising every day as additional work statements are come in or as projects are worked on through completion. It's likely going to be several years before we truly know the total cost for the individual assistance and PA assistance for that damage. Report damage and estimates are likely to increase as more data comes in, and as a reminder, it was months before we could even get in and do damage assessments for that. So this data that's being collected, and just a reminder about the area, the 548,000 acres that were flooded, taking out the 231,000 that was farmland, had those pumps been installed, roughly 300,000 acres would have been spared had those pumps been in place. That's very important to know. So the question would be, well, why 200,000? Because the environmental issues would be addressed with that, and 200,000 acres would flood anyway to keep the wetlands there. So the bottom line is potentially 300,000 acres could be spared at that time and in the future should this project come to be. So Governor, I appreciate your support in working to try to get this project completed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Director Michelle. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, we have had a another week under our belt post Labor Day with respect to COVID-19. We have not yet seen a major spike, but we have got to keep our guard up. We have got to continue to work as a state, taking care of ourselves and taking care of our neighbors. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dobbs to give you an update.
Thank you very much, Governor. Today, the Department of Health will be reporting 497 new cases of coronavirus, bringing our total case count up to 92,432. We are sadly reporting 12 additional deaths, bringing our total death toll up to 2,792. We have had, moderation in cases and declining deaths. A good time to remind everyone, as the governor mentioned, to do those simple things that we know work. Wear a mask, stay 6 feet at minimum from other folks, small groups only, and would just like to really encourage people, if they're going to have any sort of gathering, please do it outdoors. Of course, the smaller the group, the better, but outdoors is a much safer venue to have any sort of get-together than indoors, so please consider that. In other news, CMS has issued new guidance for nursing home visitation that should make it much easier for people to see their loved ones. It is available on CMS's website, so we're looking through the new guidance and look forward to people having more opportunities based on the regulatory guidelines of CMS to see their loved ones who are in nursing homes specifically. And the last thing I just want to mention is testing is available in every county at least once a week through the Department of Health drive-through clinics. It's currently available for anyone who is symptomatic, has any concern of exposure. You don't have to have a confirmed exposure, but if you're worried about being exposed, please get tested if you feel so inclined. But additionally, anyone in K-12 or child care settings can go just because they want to. And this is going to be in every county. And if you want to see the schedule, please go to healthyems.com and go to testing, or you can go to covidschedule.umc.edu to schedule either online or by phone. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Dr. Dobbs, and thank you again, all of you, for being here today. And at this time, I'll open the floor to questions. Cornelia?
Governor, I know there's been some discussion around this, but with the fair and Canton Flea Market coming up, can you tell me about whether you believe you will have to amend the current safe return order for that to be allowed, or is there a provision within the safe return order that I'm missing that would allow for that many people at a gathering, even outdoors?
Yeah, so the limitations on outdoor gatherings and indoor gatherings are gatherings for social purposes, and so I do not believe that I will have to amend any executive order to allow for the state fair, which I've been very involved in, as has Dr. Dobbs, in making sure that they do things differently this year. We had Commissioner Gibson here earlier, but he was obviously here talking about the steps that they had taken. I don't know of any amendments that will have to be made, but should there have to be amendments made, we'll make them to allow those to occur.
So what is it classified as? It's not a social gathering, so what does it?
Well, I think with it being with the fair taking place on the state fairgrounds, obviously it is it's a bit of a business operation to a certain extent. The entire Fair Commission is funded. What was the Fair Commission? The legislature made what I believe to be a very good decision this year to take the Fair Commission and put it under the budget of the Department of Agriculture. But it is, I think it's more of a business operation than it is a social gathering. The revenues that are generated actually help maintain the fairgrounds and other things, and so again, I don't know of any amendments that need to be made, but should they need to be made, we'll certainly look at that.
I'm sorry, one more. If you can have something of that size, even though it would be in that context, it seems as though even a social gathering, why have those restrictions on a social gathering where they could follow those same measures that are being taken, for instance, at the state fair?
Well, we did last week, or I believe it came into effect this week. We expanded the size of outdoor social gatherings. Indoor, as Dr. Dobbs mentioned earlier, it's the outdoor events wherein people can wear a mask and socially distance, in which the transmission rates appear, based upon lots of studies and evidence, to be significantly lower than indoors closer than 6 feet and not wearing a mask. And so we started the process back last week in expanding the size of outdoor gatherings and the allowance for the size of outdoor gatherings, and we're going to continue to monitor that. That goes until the end of September, the order that is currently in place, and so we have started the conversations as to what it looks like post October 1 or post September 30, but haven't made any final decisions on that yet.
Yes, sir.
This one question is for Dr. Dobbs. There's researchers at Ole Miss who are working on a project about the nasal spray that's supposed to, I guess, help prevent COVID-19. Have you guys talked to Ole Miss about that at all? And what do you guys think about that project?
And I'm not entirely certain to what you're referring, but I think it may be there's a povidone solution that people are using. Like there's some new evidence out that basically it's like betadine, but it's like in a preparation that's really more appropriate. It's a low concentration, that it will decrease the concentration of coronavirus immediately. Now, that's not entirely surprising because if it's antiviral, at least temporarily, it would decrease the amount there. So I think we'll just have to wait and see if it's a strategy that we can use to prevent transmission. It's a little bit hard to imagine it's going to be therapeutic. All that's very theoretical. But I'd say it's promising for maybe as a preventive for transmission primarily, and we'll just have to kind of wait and see. But, we welcome every tool that we have available.
And I just want to thank you for asking Dr. Dobbs that question and not asking me.
Yeah, for Dr. Dobbs, going back to the fair, do you feel comfortable that people can gather in a space like that? Well, it is several acres long. Do you feel like the crowd sizes might pose a health risk?
Well, I'm worried about everything. Just ask the governor. And so, yes, I mean, it does concern me. But certainly understand, that as we move through this, we're trying to find things that people can do safely and live our lives a little bit. And so I've met with the commissioner and his team, and, kind of like with the football stadiums, right? I mean, there's going to be a lot of folks there, but if we can do it properly, and that's one of the things that's different about a social event than this is they're going to have basically a safety marshal to oversee it. They're going to ensure masks. They're going to screen for people going in. They're going to maintain social distancing. They're going to have spacing between on the rides. So it should be pretty well engineered. Now, I still would recommend people who are maybe older or have chronic medical issues that might be worried about it to do everything you can to mitigate risk, and that might be to avoid crowds of this magnitude. But we understand that we got to live a little bit, and if it's something outdoors that we can do safely, we're prepared to try to help make that happen safely.
The thing that I would just add to that is, and we've said this repeatedly, typically where there is structure, whether it's in a K through 12 classroom or in settings such as this, structure tends to significantly reduce the likelihood of transmission, simply because you have people there that are making sure that the masks are being worn, that the people who are standing in line, for instance, for rides are doing so 6 feet apart. And so I will tell you that there has been hours and hours and hours of work that has gone into not every fine detail to having to shut down certain events. The fair is not going to be exactly like it was last year. There are going to be events that are not allowed. There are going to be indoor gatherings that are not allowed, and the midway, if you will, is not going to be very, very tight and compressed. It's going to be spread out over the entire fairgrounds. And so literally hours and hours of work has gone into it, and there are certainly risk associated with it. And if you are in the higher risk category, it's probably, like a lot of things, not a good idea for you to attend. Or if you are concerned or if you are scared, then you get to make a personal choice to not attend. But there has been a lot of effort put in to mitigate and to minimize those risks, and for that, just like the opening of stadiums for football games, for instance. Again, there is risk associated with it. There's risk associated with driving down Interstate 55 later today to at 70 miles an hour. There are risks in life, but we've got to do everything we can to mitigate, minimize those risks, to protect lives, but also to protect livelihoods. Yes, sir.
For Director Michelle, I wanted to follow up. You mentioned that a lot of people in the Delta that were affected by this flooding last year, they were in lower income situations. Can you talk more about how that impacted those people that maybe didn't have anything to fall back on when their homes and land started to flood?
Yep. So one of the things that we tracked during that disaster period that we had to provide to FEMA when we got the IA declaration was the unemployment piece. And unemployment for that period of time rose, I believe, and I'm trying to go back, somewhere around 2.5% for that area, which for an already impoverished area, that's significant. It's significant anywhere. And then those that relied on those agricultural type driven jobs were out of work for a long time. And in some of those areas, and Commissioner Gibson addressed it a little bit, and learning a little bit about the crops and how they're planted, were not able to be planted not only for that season, but even for the next season because the ground's still saturated. And even this year, though we've been distracted with other things this year, a lot of other things, it's important to note that it flooded again this year. We had in upwards, I believe, close to 300,000 acres that were underwater at one point this year. So the impact to that area has been significant, particularly for those that relied on the economy, the local economy for jobs, has been significant. And that's been one of the things that's really driven not only the agriculture piece, but driven the need to have these pumps there.
Alex with Mississippi Today has a question.
Hi. Do you see the Yazoo pumps as an all or nothing type of solution, or do you see any other kind of short-term mitigation solutions that should be considered as well?
Alex, I didn't hear the first part of your question. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you see the Yazoo pumps as kind of an all or nothing kind of solution, or do you think any other kind of short-term mitigation efforts should be considered?
Well, I would consider anything that would lead to short-term or long-term solutions. Obviously, the Yazoo Pumps project has been in various forms discussed for years and years and years, and so but I do think that at this point, the Corps taking a new look at the real damage that was done last year, and looking at it from the emergency management perspective is somewhat of a new approach, and one that I think is critically important because it accurately shows that the cost-benefit analysis to this project is such that that it makes sense not only for those individuals that are in the way of the rising water, but it also makes sense for the United States, and it certainly makes sense for the state of Mississippi as well. So while I believe that is a solution that should be continue to be worked with our federal partners on, I'm open to any ideas or any suggestions that anyone has as to ways to continue to try to mitigate those risks. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, we had gotten a question from a viewer. They're a senior citizen, they're on unemployment. They said that they had gotten cut off when the searching for work requirement was in place, and said they filed for an appeal, but because of the time that it's going to take, they're not sure what to do, and they're afraid because of their own health to go out and look for work. Is that something that your office is hearing about? Is it something that you guys are working to try to figure out what the solution is?
Yeah, this is the first I have heard of it, but we'll certainly look into it. There is a process whereby there can be an appeal. If this particular individual will contact my office, we will be more than happy to try to look into and find out exactly what the specific circumstances are surrounding their specific case. Just reach out to our office. Is it 359-3100? think that's the number, but I'll get it to you later. Turns out I don't call it a whole lot. Yes.
You know, this project has gotten the Yazzie Backwater project has gotten some backlash from environmentalists. Can you talk to that? You know, can you talk about those concerns that they might have, and why it's important to support farmers, and maybe ahead of that?
So it's you know, there are some who have argued in the past that the purpose of the pumps project was just for those few farmers who farm large amounts of land in the South Delta. And that's the reason that the report that Greg and his team did was so vitally important, because the reality is when over 680 homes were affected by these standing floodwaters, there was an awful lot of people across the economic spectrum, and the vast majority of those who were affected were truly affected by were individuals that were certainly in an impoverished area, and in many instances struggle. And when their small businesses are failing, and the companies and the businesses that employ them are failing, it becomes a huge hardship to so many people. But there was over 500,000 acres inundated by the backwater, and so it has a huge economic impact on everyone in that region. And I think that's something that we certainly want to point out. And the fact that the crops damages are almost $1 billion for last year alone, that's a huge number. The environmentalists that are opposed, and I don't know all of their reasoning. I have looked at it in the past, but it seems to me that we can protect the lives and livelihoods of Mississippians while at the same time working to address any concerns they may have. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Dobbs, do you have any concerns for kind of compliance fatigue, if you will, or the public trying to figure out what's what? We're asking, social gatherings need to be small, need to be outdoors, but they can go to a football game if it's a certain capacity. They can go to the fair if these measures. Are you afraid about kind of the way that people are going to process it all as it stretches on?
A little bit, but I'll tell you, there's a countervailing force of normalization of some of the safety stuff, right? So I think people are getting used to the mask. As a physician, I'm used to masks because I've been doing it for years, and so I think that there's the positive influence of kind of like even good habits are habit forming, and so I think some of the basic things are, if we can just have that situational awareness, wear a mask, be thoughtful, do outdoors. There is a gradation of safety that we can accept risk going forward as our case numbers drop. So if I am concerned, but I do think we also have that powerful force of people getting used to it and accepting and understanding, and especially success breeds success. And we've seen that we've had a real successful response over the past couple of months. Folks are definitely complying more. There's still some soft spots, but I'm hopeful.
One more for Dr. Dobbs. When it comes to Labor Day weekend numbers, what are we looking at? Do you expect to see numbers go up? Do you continue to level off and then travel back down again?
I really just thus far we haven't seen a significant signal from Labor Day as an autonomous sort of driver, whether it's intermixed with some of the college stuff or some of the school stuff. I mean, we certainly have seen outbreaks in schools and outbreaks, and some of the outbreaks in schools were Labor Day related. So there are some signals we've seen, but they've really been around the younger age folks. So as an independent sort of general driver of new cases, we haven't seen the same signal we saw after Memorial Day and 4th of July, and I'm very glad of it.
Julie Barnes with WCB. I have a question.
Yes, I have two questions for Dr. Dobbs. In light of the Mississippi Supreme Court's ruling today, where not everyone who has a pre-existing condition is allowed to vote absentee, I wanted to ask, did the Mississippi Secretary of State's office consult with the Department of Health to come up with their safety at the polls sheet that's on their website as it relates to COVID-19?
They did not from the initial part, but I have been reviewing it with the Secretary of State, and I think they have some really good plans. And we'll continue to work with them to make sure that we support safe voting. And I think voting can be done safely. We just have to do those simple things, right? The mask and the distance and all that. I would like to strongly encourage everyone to embrace mask use at the polling place. I think it's going to be really considerate of your fellow Mississippians, and then the poll workers appreciate them being out there. But there are safe ways to approach it, and we will continue to support their efforts, whether if it's in guidance or any other type of support. But I think they've put together a pretty darn good plan.
And Dr. Dobbs, that kind of leads into my second question. If you read the safety sheet on the Secretary of State's website, a mask is not required. Polling places will be arranged 6 feet apart only if possible, and voters are only encouraged to social distance. So there's not really many mandates there. I guess, and I understand you believe it can be done safely, but if there's no requirements there necessarily, how does one instill confidence that they can vote and remain healthy as well?
Yeah, and I'll just say from a legal perspective, I'm not really qualified to say what can and cannot be mandated around voting. But what I can say is those things are very important. And whatever we can do to support the distancing and the masking, if it means supplying masks or working with polling stations or anyone, we are there to support that to make it happen. And I would encourage people locally to get with their local leaders and say, we expect for this to be done safely, because it can be done in a pretty darn safe way. So, I think now's the time to be thinking about it. And then, do wear a mask for yourself, wash your hands. And there is some collective responsibility, but also some personal protection that we can take, and strongly encourage everybody to do that.
I would just add, Joey, to be fair, I'm not a legal expert either, but I'm not really sure what authority the Secretary of State has to mandate those things. We have a statewide mask mandate in place today, and that applies to all facets, and so that would apply should it stay in existence. We're going to work closely with the Secretary of State and with Dr. Dobbs to ensure that we have a safe election process, and it has been done. We have had elections in Mississippi during COVID-19. We have done it multiple times at a smaller level. We've had primaries. We had a primary runoff in the 2nd Congressional District, for instance, and so we can allow for safe voting. We can protect our people and give them the ability to go to the polls and vote, and I'm confident that we will do that in this, I think, 4 special elections that we have between now and the end of September, and I'm confident that we will do it the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November as well. Seeing no other questions, it's Friday afternoon. Please, everyone, enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, be smart, and God bless.